thing is set up correctly. Jesus fucking Christ. Alright. So I actually recorded this video a few days ago, but fucking screencasts sucks so bad. It is shocking how bad this thing is. And people were telling me, oh, just use OBS. My computer cannot use OBS. Because I bought a fucking Chromebook years ago. Anyway, let's get into this. So, this was my draft versus Blues. It's a pretty unorthodox run. I haven't really seen too many people go for the strategy I went for, which was mainly a special offense type of deal. I didn't use any spikers, I didn't use like any spinners, really, none of that. And yeah, let's go over it, shall we? So first off, let's talk about some of the bans. Rather than going in order of the bans, I'm just gonna talk about like all of my bans and my thought process. So in round 1, I banned Celebi and Blissey, which are the most prominent special walls. I should note that it is of my opinion that the only Blissey set that is viable in draft is Calm Mind. So even though that it has the option to use Aromatherapy, Wish, you know, all of the other sets that it uses in OU, the status to attack soft-boiled set, stuff like that, it's never using that in draft. And that's because it loses too hard to Calm Minders. It would be pretty stupid if Blissey just instantly lost to Calm Mind, like Rest Talk Slowbro or something like that, or Calm Mind Raikou. So it's never going to use non-Calm Mind sets. And Celebi... Sorry, that was weird. Celebi isn't ever going to run defensive sets either. And this is kind of something that that I've noticed in this tour, in that unless you have a dedicated stall squad with like Umbreon, Weezing, that type of thing, you aren't really using defensive sets, and even then, it's just better to kill the opponent rather than just try to stall. The only time stall stuff works is if you have like a bunch of really good defensive pieces and you get the matchup on top of it. That's the other thing too, is that you need to get the matchup. If you don't really get the matchup, it isn't going to be as good. And defensive Celebi, I think, is way better than like defensive Blissey sets. Just because of the natural cure and the lead seed and the recover, and it's really annoying. But its offensive potential is way too good to pass up. Setting aside the power of the Calm Mind sets and how good those are, you also have the SD sets, so you could and the power in those, not just because you have the option to pass Swords Dance, but you could run mixed Swords Dance sets, and those have a lot of potential too. So banning Celebi and banning Blissey, I felt like almost had no drawback, just because it allowed Raikou a lot more freedom to do stuff, the Psychics as well. From Blues, he just banned Skarmotar. It is also my opinion that I think that Spikers are very whatever in draft. I feel that unless you have like a really slow team that has no spinners and no real way to deal with Spikers, I think Spikers are mid. The only spiker that the only two Spikers that I think are good in draft are Skarmory and Glalie. Glalie because it's only really weak to Rock, Fire, Steel, which isn't a lot. You could lead Glalie off versus a lot of stuff, and Skarmory is Skarmory. That's very self-explanatory. The Tyranitar ban makes sense, because Tyranitar is still really strong. It's not as easy to exploit its weaknesses in a draft format as it is in the Emerald Open format, where you could just slap fighting coverage on everything. So for those that don't know, in the Emerald Open format, you're only limited to 8 Pokemon, as opposed to, 22 or 24? So, the disparity in that format it's a lot easier to cover for certain stuff, whereas here, you have to cover for an entire draft of Pokemon, so it can be a lot harder. And even then, you might not even get the matchup where the coverage is good. So, do keep that in mind. That being said, Tyranitar is just generically good, so I understand why Blues banned it. And because I was player 1, I decided to draft Snorlax. 2 of the Snorlax's best answers were banned. Skarm, which can set up spikes, can force Lax to run like weird coverage moves like Focus Punch or Fire Blast. And Tyranitar, which sets sand and is just annoying to Snorlax. None of those factors were present at all. And Blues ended up picking Metagross and Zapdos. Metagross is the best Pokemon in the entire format, and that's not even close. Metagross dunks on everything in this format, and especially so because you can pick the things that answer it, or you can just ban them. So like Skarmory is a semi-decent answer to Metagross, so at least the physical sets, you could just ban it, or pick it yourself. Milotic is a decent answer to Metagross, you could just ban it or pick it yourself. I picked it, but I still have to get the matchup where Milotic is good into it. So, even if you have like a answer to Metagross, it's still Metagross. For those that play OU, you would know that even Swampert and Suicune and Zapdos and Skarmory sometimes are not even enough to stop this thing. What happens if you could just ban them outright, or just pick them? Super broken. So I understand why he picked it. And this is a trend that you'll probably see in the very late stages of the Callous Tour. You are going to see a lot of Metagross bans, because people are going to understand that this Pokemon is obscenely busted. It's so good. The same with Zapdos. You're probably going to see a lot of first picks into Zapdos, or just straight up bans. It's so broken, dude. Zapdos is so good. Its speed tier is perfect. It ties with a lot of things in the meta. Its bulk is fantastic. Its typing is also busted in the draft format. It's just so good. There's literally no drawback to picking it. And on my side, I ended up picking Milo and Raikou. Milo, because it's a good answer to Mence. And it's just a good answer to a lot of things. It dunks on all of the fires. It's a decent Metagross check. It's really potent offensively, because you could run a Hypnosis 3 attack set, so it doesn't even have to play the defensive game. It could just run offensive moves and be broken. And Raikou is also just generically good. Really fast, pretty strong, pretty bulky too, so if you wanted to make like a bulky Calm Mindset, Raikou fits the bill. And Blues ended up taking Jolteon and Salamence. Jolteon, which is pretty much good into a lot of stuff that I brought. Jolteon does well in the Milo. Makes it to where I can't run like mono T-Bolt sets with Raikou. And it's just an annoyance to Raikou. It's not a counter by any means, but it is a very annoying presence for it. Just because they could use like status and roar and mess around. And Salamence is also just generically good. I don't think it's as good as it is in OU. DD sets, definitely so. Choice Band, for sure. The power of Mence and Draft, I definitely feel, are the mix sets. Because there's literally like no drawback to it. Mix sets just... It's always going to be hitting something. You know, it's really only answered well by Milo. And even something like Regirock or Regice don't, except maybe Regirock, but Salamence could use Hydro Pump. And if you switch Regirock into Hydro Pump, it's not going to like that. Although, truth be told, it is a base 80 accuracy move, so there's that. And I ended up picking Swampert and Regirock, which, you know, Regirock is more of like a protection pick, and it was also like a good answer to like a lot of the stuff that Blues ended up picking early on. So like Zapdos, Jolteon, Salamence, they don't want to go anywhere near Regirock, really. Even Metagross doesn't enjoy switching into Regirock because of the potential of T-Wave and counter sets. Because Regirock's defense is so massive that it could just no-sell. Well, it's not really no-selling a Meteor Mash, but it'll live the Meteor Mash, and it will click counter, and Metagross is dead. And also, Regirock, this is something that I think people will also notice in these formats. Pokemon that could use setup moves are extremely broken. So Regirock gets access to Curse. Curse Regirock is insanely good. If they don't have access to a super bulky water type immediately right out of the gate, Curse Regirock is a massive threat. If they go into something like Flygon or Metagross, you could threaten the hell out of them with EQ or counter or whatever. Same with Snorlax. Snorlax is almost always using Curse in a format like this. I don't think you're ever using Curseless Snorlax. Same with Swampert. You could use Curse on Swampert. And like with Blues has Agility Zapdos, Agility Jolteon. They can Baton Pass those or use it themselves. Salamence could use DD. Metagross has Agility. Agility Metagross in Draft is pretty broken. So, like, all of these Pokemon that me and Blues have the potential to use setup moves and win the game. And that's kind of how you should play Draft. You should either play a defensive team that has, like, a lot of layered defensive options. You still need to get, like, the matchup, because if you run into some problematic stuff that the defensive team can't really handle, that's pretty bad. In that instance, you would rather have like an offense team. So like even if it is weak to something, you could still out-pressure the opponent. But defensive stuff is still good in Draft for sure. I don't think it is as good as like offense, because offense you could just set up and kill the opponent. It doesn't really matter. So like anything that sets up and just kills things is what I'm gonna value in Draft. Which is why you end up seeing what you see me bring versus Blues. It's stuff that could set up and kill the opponent. And Blues ends up last picking into Gengar and Fori. I don't think Fori is that good, just because that 4 times weakness to fire is so bad. It's so bad. And Fori also has problems of getting on the field in general. If it isn't coming in on some like weaker physical attack, it's not going to have an easy time switching. And even if it comes in on something that it resists from a special attacker, it still has to run away in fear and like scout the like the fire move. So it's not as good as Skarmory. I think Glalie is a lot better too, because Glalie is way faster and its speed tier doesn't suck ass. That's the other thing I don't like about 42. It's very passive. So like certain Pokemon with like subsets can really take advantage of it, or just setup sets in general take advantage of it. I never liked 40 in Draft. It's a lot better in OU, where you could put it with very specific Pokemon that synergize well with it. Here, not as much, but I understand why you picked it. And Gengar is just generically good. Hypnosis Gengar in this format just seems like it's obscenely busted. It just has no counterplay. It just doesn't. You could just switch Gengar into something, click Hypnosis, and there's nothing the opponent can do. Not really. If you just ban Blissey, or you take Blissey and Celebi for yourself, and then they have no natural cure Pokemon, what are they going to do? Nothing. You just click Hypnosis and win. And you don't even need to click Hypnosis, because you could click any move and probably win with Gengar, because it's so good. Obscenely busted. And for me, I ended up picking Swampert, because it was just really good into what Blues had. It made it to where they can't just run Hidden Power Ice on everything. They do have to account Swampert in the builder. That was like the main thing, the main reason why I picked it. And it was also like a protection pick for meta, for like any other grounds, like physical walls that he would end up using. It's also good in Aerodactyl. That's another reason why I picked it, in case he drafted Aerodactyl. And so 2, 4. Okay, so my last picks this round were Alakazam and Regice. Both of which were protection picks of my own. And they were also just really good abusers of the strategy that I had. So, Alakazam, really, really good. Its speed is really good. Really strong. If the opposing drafter doesn't have a lot of dark or steel types, and like Blues does here, they're just kind of out of luck versus Alakazam. Alakazam will just completely destroy people in like endgames. The biggest drawback to Alakazam is that it really can't fit Calm Mind, because unlike the other psychics, it doesn't have very good special bulk, or very good bulk at all. If it gets hit with a physical attack, it just literally dies. So it's a lot better to run Alakazam with just attacks and Encore, because it does get Encore, and Encore is really, really good in a format like this. And it's just good in general. It lasts a minimum of 3 turns in Gen 3, which is extremely strong. And it could go all the way to 6 turns. 6 turns of Pokemon loses you the game. So, yeah, really good move. And Regice, pretty self-explanatory. Protection pick as well, because I didn't want him drafting Regice. That's a special wall. And it's also a really good abuser of this strategy, and it's got access to Boom, Psych Up, that type of thing. So to talk about round 2 of bans, I ended up banning Arrow and Registeel. Pretty self-explanatory. Registeel is a special wall. It annoys Snorlax a bit too. Aerodactyl, which revenge kills everything, and is also very annoying. Got rid of that too. Blues took a really good abuser out of the pool. He banned Starmie, which makes perfect sense, because looking at his draft, like his draft overall, Starmie devours like 90% of it. So him banning out Starmie was really good for him. Moltres, I'm a bit iffy on Moltres, but I understand why he banned it. Just because he wanted to limit the amount of Pokemon that could OHKO Metagross and just be a massive threat. Moltres is a massive threat. Really strong, has access to Will-O-Wisp. Really broken Pokemon in OU. Not as much as in Draft, because in Drafts, I think, especially in like the Callous format, you really want to value speed. And if you aren't faster, you better be like really tanky, and you should be able to take hits, right? So you either outrun the opponent and annihilate them off of the face of the earth, or you are slow and you take hits. And Pokemon that fall in between really need something to differentiate themselves. So round 2 picks. I picked into Sceptile and Dragonite. Pretty self-explanatory. Sceptile is really fast, really good into like certain waters. A good abuser of the strategy that I have too. Dragonite I have a very low opinion on Dragonite just because in Gen 4, Dragonite has Draco Meteor and Outrage in the Life Orb item, as well as a whole host of other items that it could use. So even though that Dragonite is slow, it really hurts when it hits you. Like, it hits you like a truck, and if you don't resist its attacks, you just die. And it also has access to Dragon Dance, really, really, really powerful, right? It's also got access to Superpower and Extreme Speed. It has none of that in Gen 3. It doesn't have a good stab, really. It doesn't have a good speed tier. It has a lot of coverage options, but they're kind of whatever on something like Dragonite. So honestly, I wish I would have picked into something else other than Dragonite. But in my fairness, it does have a lot. It is a decent abuser of the strategy that I have in place. So it's fine for what it was, but I don't think Dragonite is good in draft. I don't think Dragonite is good in Gen 3 in general. They shouldn't drop it to UU though. I think it would be extremely broken in UU. It's very likely it would be broken in UU. There's way too much potential for it to be too strong in UU. It's got way too many tools. But in a draft format like this is kind of whatever. Blues ended up taking Gyarados and Flygon, which are two very solid Pokemon. Gyarados doesn't really do too much in my draft. Like, Snorlax beats Gyarados in a 1v1 pretty handedly. Milo can tech for it. Raikou, if Gyarados hasn't acuted a DD yet, it just dies to Raikou. Regirock humiliates Gyarados in a 1v1, completely and utterly. Swampert versus Gyarados is the most volatile matchup of all time. Who knows who's gonna win that one? And everything else is just like, it may be able to beat it, but also not. And Flygon, good pick for what it is, but Flygon in general is just not good. It's too weak. It doesn't have access to Dragon Stab. The Dragon typing on Flygon is completely useless in Gen 3. It doesn't do anything. At all. Really. The Dragon typing might as well not even exist on Flygon in Gen 3. In Gen 4 onward, though, that Dragon typing is extremely deadly. But we're not playing Gen 4, unfortunately. So round 2, I ended up picking Charizard and Kingdra. The Kingdra pick I do kind of regret, honestly. I would have been way better off by picking Gardevoir or Ludicolo myself. Ludicolo is what Blues ended up picking. But Blues ended up going with Heracross and Cloyster. Cloyster obviously is decent. I think it's a worse version of Glalie in draft, but I see its merits. There are some people that say that Glalie is better than Cloyster in OU. I don't think that's the case, but I can see where they're coming from. And Charizard, really fast, really strong, obviously extremely good, especially for the strategy that I'm going for, with Blissey Band, Arrow Band, Charizard, and plus with me picking in the Milo and Raikou and Regirock, these really good resists the Charizard. Charizard was primed to annihilate Blues. I just had to set it up well. Heracross, massive threat, which pretty much mandated that I picked Weezing. Weezing is the only thing besides Salamence in this draft that really threatens Heracross. If you don't have either of those two, I think you just lose to it. So Heracross has the potential to annihilate everything, but people are so afraid of it, and I feel like that so many people are traumatized by getting completely swept by it in OU that people just over-prepare for it in draft. So, it's good, but a lot of potential for it to do nothing, but its potential to completely annihilate the opponent makes it worthy, so I see why I drafted it. And also, my team to this point was pretty weak to it. So I see why he picked it. And in the last round of draft, or at least I think it's the last round of draft, he ended up picking Ludicolo and Vaporeon. And I ended up picking Venusaur and Weezing. Venusaur, good rock, or it's not a rock resist, good water resist, and it has access to Sleep Powder. It gets Swords Dance. SD Venusaur is pretty good. I think it's very underrated in this tour. I feel like that if you manage to get Weezing and Salamence, and you ban those two Pokemon out, SD Venusaur has a lot of potential to just do stuff. I think that more people should use it. Or just use Venu in general. And Weezing, which is the best fighter protection in draft. I think something that you'll end up seeing from certain people, maybe, is people who end up wanting to go with like more physically based styles are going to end up picking. So let's say we get a matchup between like Zakuru or like whoever. They pick into like a slower team. Most people are probably going to start picking like Fighter plus Weezing. That way the opponent can't pick Weezing later on. Because Weezing is also just a really good offensive Pokemon when it doesn't have to wall stuff. Because it has Will-O-Wisp, Boom, Taunt, Destiny Bond. Stab Poison isn't actually that terrible in draft. It's really easy to ban out the poison resists. And the Pokemon that do resist poison end up getting burned. So that's another thing. And now we're going to go into round 3 of bans, which I just banned Chansey. I probably shouldn't have banned Chansey because it's bad, but I banned it. And I banned Dugtrio, which annoyed Raikou, and I also banned it so I could use Entei. So there's that. And Blues banned Magneton and Houndoom. I could see why he banned Magneton, because it's actually really annoying offensively into him. Like, Jolteon doesn't like taking status, neither does Flygon. And Flygon can be vulnerable to stupid-ass, like, Endure HP Ice sets from Magneton, so... yeah, I can see why he banned it. And Houndoom, he was already pretty weak to fires, so his ability to resist Houndoom's attacks were pretty awful, all things considering. So I understand completely why you banned Houndoom, because Houndoom would have just mauled him if you allowed me to pick it. It's kind of like the Starmie pick in the sense that his ability to resist its attacks don't really exist, and the few answers that he does have can easily get overwhelmed either by the Pokemon itself or its teammates. Or if he just gets a bad matchup, he just loses to it. So, completely understand. And now we get into the last picks, which were, you know, round 1 of pick 3 was Entei and Espeon. For him, it was Gardevoir and Hariyama. This kind of made me sad because I realized when I picked into Venusaur that I messed up and I didn't pick Gardevoir, and Gardevoir would have annihilated him off the face of the planet. And the reason for that is that Gardevoir literally learns every move on planet Earth, all the utility moves, all of the good offensive moves. It has Trace, so it counters the hell out of Vaporeon. It also can Trace Levitate, so it completely dicks on like Jolteon potentially, and even Flygon. So a lot of missed potential here. I could have picked, and Hariyama is just generically good. And for me, I picked Entei, because I think Entei... The times I picked Entei, they have unfortunately haven't done too much, spoiler alert, but I think Entei has a lot of potential to be good. And Espeon is very underutilized. Although I haven't watched a lot of the draft videos outside of my own. Espeon is really strong, really good speed tier, really good typing. It could call Mind Pass. It's just good. And for Blues, in round 2. You end up picking Dusclops, which is an annoying Pokemon, and Miltank, which is another annoying Pokemon. These are self-explanatory. Dusclops is a spin blocker that doesn't do anything. It's decent defensively, but it's one of the slowest Pokemon in the game. Its offenses are awful. It has... Its offenses are so pitifully bad. And Miltank is actually good, but it has the worst case of 4 move slot syndrome I've ever seen. It's got a bunch of good moves. It can't really run all of them, which is an issue that it has in OU. And it has it even worse in draft, I feel. And I'm not going to talk about the rest of the rounds here. I'm just going to talk about the generic picks. So for Blues, he picked Steelix, which annoying Pokemon. I see why he picked it. Good Lax check, good check to Electrics. But outside of clicking the move Toxic and Roar, it doesn't really do anything outside of that. It's just annoying. That's really it. It's just annoying. Its ability to exert offensive pressure doesn't even exist. It's really bad in that sense. If it can't hit you with the move Toxic, and you're also immune to Earthquake, Steelix feels fucking worthless as a Pokemon. It's so bad if it runs into stuff like that. He also picked into Jinx, which is a Pokemon I should have picked into, but I never did. So he picked into something that's really threatening to me and something that could have been really good for me. I just never picked it because I'm an idiot. And he picked Marowak, which, whatever. It doesn't do anything outside of being able to receive Speed Pass. And speaking of Speed Pass, he picked Ninjask, which meant that he had 3 Speed Passers, which I was really paranoid about. But he didn't bring Speed Pass a single time. Probably because Speed Pass, outside of the degenerate garbage that it can do, is pretty fucking bad. Especially when I prepared for it. And made sure that I was really good into it. So if he brought Speed Pass, it wouldn't have really done anything, probably, unless he got lucky. And then Lantern, which is annoying. Is this another annoying defensive Pokemon that he picked? It can resist stuff. It doesn't really do anything. It just sits there and resists certain attacks for X period of time. Is it good? Maybe. But I don't think the do-nothing defensive Pokemon are even that good. They're good when you pair them with other defensive Pokemon that could slowly make progress. But on their own, a lot of defensive Pokemon in draft are worthless. Because they're hacks prone if you rely on them too much. They don't really progress the game. If the opponent plays really aggressively and makes good predictions, you're gonna fall behind really quickly. And defensive blob Pokemon kind of force you to play in a predictable way, unless you yourself take risks. But if the risks don't work in your favor, it's the same thing as if the opponent makes a prediction and you lose out on it. If you mispredict, that's even worse, probably. So yeah, he had a few annoying defensive Pokemon, but it wasn't that big a deal for me. And for me, I ended up picking Espeon because I wanted to take away a Psychic immunity and something that could answer Psychics that he could potentially draft, and something that could Pursuit Trap Gengar as well, and answer Gardevoir, which I currently had no answers for, really. I picked Electabuzz, which honestly should have been my Jinx pick, but I picked it because it's really fast, and it has a bunch of moves that it could learn. P2 is another pick that was pretty bad. I could have picked into something else, like Slowking. Slowking would have probably been better there. I just didn't. Well, actually, that was more of a protection pick, because I didn't want him to have P2, so... yeah. And Slowbro, it's slow, it gets Calm Mind, and it's got really good moves and really good bulk. So, it can do stuff. And remember, this format is all about clicking setup moves and killing the opponent. or you outlast them until you can kill them. So Slowbro fits 2 of those categories. Raichu, pretty bad, but it's got good moves. It's pretty fast. And Electric type is pretty good. And I picked Grumpig because I like Grumpig. There's literally no other reason why I picked Grumpig. I just picked Grumpig because Grumpig is my favorite psychic. That's really it. So, let me see here. I had it pulled up earlier. But, here we go. So let me pull up Showdown really quick. So, we'll briefly talk about what the prep stage was before watching the actual battles themselves. This was fairly unique battle-wise, because when I played against Blues, I was in a really weird situation where I had to go to work, and I only had 20 minutes to play. And the game 3 of the series was really funny, and I'll elaborate on it later, but for now we'll just talk about the prep. So, as you can see here, where's my Game 1 team? Oh, my Game 1 team is right here. So this was my Game 1 team, which was... The idea behind this was just to pick a weaker offensive team and preserve my stronger options for later on. So we had like a Calm Mind, Roar, Entei, Calm Mind 3 attacks Grumpig. Something that I forgot about Grumpig when I drafted it was that it has Thick Fat. So it actually resists Jinx's stabs, which is hilarious. So it's one of the only Pokemon in the game that resists both Ice Beam and Psychic. And it also resists Fire, which is pretty good too. And Grumpig also has a lot of moves, which is cool too. And I had a Substitute 3 attack Dragonite set. A Curse counter set, which was meant to set up, take a hit from Flygon or Meta, counter, and then it would just keep sweeping, and it would just keep trucking through. Calm Mind 2-Wave Slowbro, which the idea behind this is that you could T-Wave stuff that answers it, and then later on you Calm Mind and just rip right through them. And then it's SC3 attacks Venusaur, which I like. And then the Game 2 team was a straight-up special offense team. So Hypnosis, 3 attacks Milo. Pataya, Sunny Day Charizard, which is a set from Overused, which is a lot easier to pull off in Draft, because in Draft there's no, you could ban out Tar, you could ban out, there's no Suicune. Suicune is just banned permanently. And you could pick Milo. So you could pick and ban the stuff that this set isn't good into, and then just run the set, and then it's really good. And then Sub Calm Mind S-Band, which should have been Calm Mind Pass. It's just I'm just an idiot. 3 attacks Encore Alakazam. Psycup Rest Regice, which is kind of funny, because I wanted a Pokemon that completely destroyed Jinx. So yeah, I was really scared of Jinx in these games. And then a mixed Sceptile, which has Aerial Ace, so it's meant to catch Heracross off guard, basically. And then the last team, which is sort of this weird mixed offense thing, where I have 2 like defensive Pokemon, Raichu, and then Snorlax. So, yeah, this was like my para answer. This was mostly used to answer Jinx, the game he brought it, and just be annoying to the Psychics. Raichu was supposed to be like a late game thing that did stuff, you know. Raikou was really self-explanatory. Swampert was just there to be annoying. And then probably my win con, which was Snorlax. So let's get into the games. Now, is this game 1? This is game 1. So, this game 1 I ended up losing. Mostly because of the Hypnosis Gengar. The Hypnosis Gengar kind of destroyed me. And as you can see, there's like this interesting back and forth that we have where Blues like tries to set up something, but then he gets walled by Slowbro. My biggest mistake that I made this game was I just didn't really play this well. I could have utilized Slowbro way better. Slowbro had the potential to just completely destroy him, and I just didn't utilize it very well. So, the resulting game that you see is basically me making bad decisions. This game 1, like I could have easily beaten Blues if I just had a brain, basically. And I do get unlucky with the Rock Slide there, but that doesn't really matter too much. Like Regirock was a win con here for sure. It's just I just didn't play it well. So my bad play ended up resulting in a loss for me. So we're gonna put this on hyper fast, just because nothing really interesting happens. Like he rests, stuff happens, Slowbro does stuff. I try to sub up with Dragonite, but he immediately goes into Gengar. No nonsense. And this is where I made my biggest mistake, which was waking up the Entei when I could have just went back into Dragonite or into Slowbro. Yeah. I do get lucky with the Fortress here, but I make a really dumb decision that I stated on Jolteon. I don't know why I did this. I was just being fucking dumb. And me waking up Entei ended up biting me in the ass because this exchange happens where, you know, I do get, like, mildly lucky where I crit the Gyarados, but it doesn't really matter. Gyarados is kind of steamrolled through me. Regirock did live that, but even still, yeah, the fruits of my bad play are displayed here pretty magnificently. And we get to this game 2, which was the polar opposite of the game 1. Oh, where do I even begin here? So, Lantern, defensive Pokemon, annoying. We talked about Lantern briefly earlier. Semi-briefly. And, yeah, what you see here is, pretty interesting, because what ends up happening is that Lantern, spoiler, I guess, ends up getting frozen by Regice, which is about to happen right now, and I end up playing my luck, because I wanted to force the Lantern to Sleep Talk so it could go into Alakazam and be really annoying. I didn't like that he got frozen to begin with, because I was like, ugh, are you kidding me? Like, I gotta sit here and just wait for this thing to unthaw so he could fucking rest, really? Just annoying. And, I also wanted an excuse to go into Espeon, too. So, yeah, this exchange was really annoying for me. But it ended up working out, which is kind of weird. Because I end up Calm Mining with Espeon. Here it goes in the Dusclops. I end up getting the fuck out of there. Which, to be honest, I should have just attacked with the Espeon. But I ended up setting up this rather well, where I Sunny Day with Charizard. He ends up Shadow Balling me. And he ends up putting me in Pattaya Blaze range. And this is where Charizard starts going fucking crazy. So Lantern, which is frozen, annihilated off of the face of the earth. Flygon, which comes in, that gets a hidden power ice, that's dead. So 2 Pokemon are dead. Cloyster comes in, that dies too. So things are dropping like crazy. Charizard is going insane. Zapdos comes in, gets completely destroyed. Doesn't die because he has a lot of bulk on it. But yeah, that indicates that's a Spadef Zapdos as well. Dusclops comes in. I'm going to put this on hyper fast again, because what happens is pretty funny. Like, I had the opportunity to just win the game with Milo, but Milo decided to miss 2 hydro pumps, and so I ended up going into my Regice. I started being annoying with Regice, blah, 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 blah. I played pretty cautiously in this endgame because I realized I could have very easily fell behind if I just... So I ended up going into Alakazam there. I landed a Fire Punch on a prediction, and Dusclops ends up rolling a bad Sleep Talk. More stuff happens, and Alakazam ends up cleaning. So yeah, I end up 6-0ing Blues here, which is crazy. Charizard proving why it's insanely good. And now we get to this. This is the game... So remember when I said I had to go to work? Right. So in this game, Blues did a strategy that was pretty dirty overall. Although I don't really blame him for doing it, per se. Because at the end of the day, you play for you, right? You don't play for anybody else. You play this game to win on your own terms. So when he... did what he ended up doing, I was like, okay, it's kind of scummy, but I understand why he did it. And what ends up happening is that at this point, I'm cutting it pretty close. And I have to, in 15 minutes, I got to go to work. And Blues recognizes this, and he ends up trying to timer stall me, which is kind of funny. And you know, this exchange happens where Raichu ends up dying, and then stuff happens with Snorlax, blah blah blah. Snorlax is doing stuff. Snorlax was like my biggest key to victory here, because the only thing that was stopping the Snorlax from doing anything was the fucking Steelix. And I had the advantage of having Snorlax. Now, keep in mind, he did have like an offensive Vaporeon, which was annoying. And then this exchange with the Steelix happens. Also, weakening the Steelix here was really important because I had a Hidden Power Water Raikou, so any amount of chip I could get on the Steelix was good. So then this exchange happens where the Steelix gets full parried multiple times, and he has to play around the Snorlax. Snorlax is at plus whatever. A Ludicolo gets fully paralyzed too, so that's dead. I end up playing it safe on the Heracross and end up switching out. And yeah, Snorlax is also back at full because of all the leftovers recovery. So this endgame was completely dominated by Snorlax because Snorlax just decided that it wanted to win the game, which is kind of funny. So yeah, Mence dies. He tries to make a predict there, but I end up staying in because if Heracross burned its Salic Berry there and just attacked me, he wouldn't have the Salic Berry anymore. That means I could force it out with Weezing, and then Raikou would disclaim. And as you can see, at multiple points, the timer is just going down. You know, I say this, right? And as you can see, Blues just doesn't do anything for a long period of time. And this was around the time I ended up just jumping into my car, and I was just like, fuck this. And every time that I ended up stopping at a stop sign or a stoplight, I looked at my phone, I would take a turn, and I would just keep going. So that was pretty funny. So, my computer's about to be dead, but ideally I'll be able to upload this video here in a few minutes. If you guys enjoyed this video, like it. My match with Zokuru will probably be up on Sunday, because I don't feel like recording it right now. That series is pretty interesting too, and we'll go in depth on that as well, including the draft. The drafts for that was also really fun. So I'm going to fuck off before my computer decides to die on me. So like the video, all that good stuff. I'm out of here.